Good morning, Wolverhampton. It's that time again, your Sunday morning wake-up call, but with extra sass and real talk. And of course, a whole lot of loose opinions. Now, you're listening to Loose Sisters, where we say it as it is and sometimes as it shouldn't be. Now, I'm your host, Alvina Ali, and every week I'm joined by some of the boldest, funniest and most brutally honest women and brother around as well. Now, we tackle big topics, the awkward questions, and everything in between as well. And let me tell you, today's show is going to shake some tables, definitely. Now, let's meet the sisters and brother who are going to help me stir the pot today. Now, first up, she's helped deliver more babies than some people have had hot meals. And let's be real, she probably has more patience than all of us combined. But don't let that fool you. She'll tell you off quicker than a midwife spotting you drinking fizzy pop during pregnancy. It's the one and only Sunita Banga.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, yes, Sunita. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Good to be here.
Lovely. Right, next, she's the influencer who could probably convince you to buy a potato peeler, even if you don't eat potatoes. Now, when she's not posing for the perfect selfie, she's dropping truth bombs that'll have you questioning your life choices. So say hello to Farida Khalifa.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good morning.
Wa alaikum salam, sister. Right, okay, now she spends her days making sure people don't reoffend, but today she's here to commit a serious crime against boring conversations. Now, if there's anyone who knows how to deal with drama, it's her, because she deals with real drama daily. It's our probation officer, Zainab B.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here.
Morning. And finally, here's proof that being a businessman means handling business, whether it's closing deals, managing staff, or dodging. Can I get a discount? Now, messages from friends and family. Now, I'm sure he gets that all the time. Now, if you want to know how to turn a hobby into a hustle, here's your man. It's the lovely Prince.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Wa alaikum salam. Now, sisters and brothers, welcome to the show. Are we all feeling loose today?
Yes.
Are we
Thank you,
ready?
yeah.
Are we
Yeah.
all fired up as well?
100%.
100%. Right, okay. Now, last week, obviously, we had Zainab B joining the panel. So Zainab, can you just tell us a bit about yourself?
I don't know whether you remember, I had my own show a way back, but at the moment I'm working as a probation officer. I'm working as a probation officer for Probation Service Wolverhampton, and I supervise individuals on licensed conditions in custody as well as in the community, and also safeguarding. So we work with a lot of domestic violence victims, agencies and housing, drug agencies, and food banks and so on. So we try and help them, and as well as keeping the public safe.
Right.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. I don't know for Zainab's benefit whether any of you want to introduce yourself. Shall we do that so that she gets a bit of your background and our listeners will have a quick catch up?
Yeah, hunky dory. My name's Prince. Basically, I got a shop in Wolverhampton Penfields, just takeaway fish and chip shop. Done that for 21 years. Been a part of the business, but owned it for about 8 years. But yeah, just that basically. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Prince. Frida.
Actually, I think Zainab's met me years ago, haven't you, Zainab?
Yes.
I have.
We discovered that last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
How many years was it, Zainab?
I think 20 years, and yeah.
20 years ago, was it when you actually said your vows? and
Yes,
you
I
had your
did.
guitar? And I was actually the makeup artist, and
Woo!
I did her henna.
Yeah, she did my henna.
Henna.
Yeah.
Yes, because actually now people don't remember me as a henna artist, but for years that's how I initially set up my own business through the Princess Trust.
Wow.
But I am a hair and makeup artist,
Mm.
influencer, and I've been on Big Brother on TV as well
Yeah.
as Blankety Blank and Come Dine With Me.
Okay, but did you not have like a training academy at one point?
Yes, yes.
Wow. Frida, it's all coming out today.
Yeah, I used to also teach for for South Birmingham College, Hair and Beauty.
Wow.
I was running a training academy through my own business as well. I've done quite a lot.
You have, haven't you?
Mashallah.
Yeah.
Quite an open book, aren't you?
Alhamdulillah.
Oh, bless you. Right, Sunita.
Hi everyone. I'm a midwife now. I used to be a nurse. I've been working for the NHS for it'll be 25 years this year.
Mm-hmm.
Mashallah.
I can't believe that. I don't feel old enough.
We're all giving our age away.
I
aren't
know. I know.
we? It's a mature,
Yeah. but
mature panel.
It is.
Mm.
It is. Lots of experience. That's what we bring to the table, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we've all got a lot to say.
And sorry, Alvina, could I ask you a question?
Yes, go on.
So how long have you been doing this hosting, and what were you doing before, and what other things do you do?
Right, okay. So people actually call me Jacqueline of all trades. You know, you've heard of Jack of all trades, yeah?
I love that.
So basically, for those who don't know me, I'm a full-time civil servant. And I also manage Ramadan Radio behind the scenes and obviously presenting as well. My main presenting is with Radio Excel, and I've been doing that for more than 18 years now.
Wow.
And I've won quite a few awards along the line. And I'm nominated again for Best Female Radio Presenter
Alhamdulillah.
for the whole of the
Nice.
UK.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I do that as well. And also I run my own charity, which I have been doing for the last 5 years.
And hold on, can I just ask, where do they need to, where can they vote for you?
Right. Okay. Oh, thank you for the plug,
Yeah,
Frida.
thank
I
you.
really appreciate that. So yeah. So if anybody wants to vote for me, they can do that. All they've got to do is go under my radio name, which is DJ Ashki. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. The post is up there. It tells you where the link is, and you can vote as well. So yeah.
Inshallah.
So the Icon Awards, where is the body that I've been nominated at, that will be taking place on the 11th of May. So we don't know who's going to win. We're just going to turn up and we'll find out. And I've also been nominated for the Oracle Awards, which is going to be taking place in October. But I haven't advertised that yet. So I thought I'll just get Ramadan Radio out the way. And then
Fab.
get May the 11th out the way. And then I'll probably advertise the Oracle Awards, yeah. So
Yeah, brilliant.
that's what I
Good
do,
luck.
as well as being a housewife and everything else, you know. Yeah, Jacqueline of all trades.
Just amazing, really. how
Thank
you find
you.
the time.
Right, shall we kick into the first question then? Are you guys all ready?
Absolutely.
Right, now, the discussion topic number 1 was, should we still be sending money back home? Now, back in the day, sending money back home was seen as a duty, supporting family members, helping build houses, funding weddings, and even just sending extra for emergencies. But in 2025, is this still necessary? And are we being taken advantage of? Or is it this just part of our culture?
Yeah, to be honest, this is quite a tough one. Because as much as we say we need to look after our loved ones back home,
Yeah.
what tended to happen was the people in the UK were being neglected by their parents. Which is really, really sad, because money would be sent over abroad and they would be taken care of. But in the meantime, bills weren't being paid, children weren't being fed, and, you know, marriages were suffering, and it was putting a lot of strain on the pressures. And with the crisis that we have with the, you know, it's a difficult time right now. People aren't even managing their own lifestyles, let alone looking after loved ones abroad. And there's no point in building a mansion abroad. You're not
You're gonna, yeah.
you don't take it with you. I know so many people that are in that situation where parents were selfish and sending money abroad, building their mansions, and not really thinking about how now it's a nightmare trying to sell them and getting the money across, and you're paying into the tax, and it's just too much. Yeah.
There's either, the thing about the properties is, obviously, I know some people have been investing and sending money back home just to make a better life for their families and stuff. And that's where they're building brand new houses and stuff. But with that comes conflicts, arguments, who owns it. And what you usually find is that the person here in the UK is funding the whole project, and people there think or take liberties of that person, and they take ownership of the property. So when the person goes over, there's issues, conflicts, they might not be allowed
100.
in, you know, and there's all these things. And then you find people going backwards, trying to go through the courts to obtain the paperwork, and there's so much forgery going on as well. Is it all worth it?
No.
You know?
And yeah, no, not at all. It's not worth it.
Mm.
Oh,
But I just want to say that it still continues, even though we say,
It does.
people do acknowledge, okay, their relatives might be taking their property, their land, or whatever, but they still continue to do it, and they still continue to, like, kind of isolate their own families here, isolate their children, and it kind of, like Frida said, it kind of creates that disadvantage for the young people here, for the families, for the women. And it's like they don't see it. Some of them that come from abroad, I feel, they don't see that they're doing anything wrong. And they quite happily will take out a loan to send off back home. But if a child needs, I don't know, help with the uni fees, they want them to get their own loan and pay it off. So it's like double standards almost.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think what makes it worse is when you see things on TikTok. Have you seen these trees where they stick money on there and then they send a message back home to say that money grows on trees, and they're pulling the notes off and collecting it? I think things like that. I mean, even I have noticed that people from Pakistan who do come into the UK, they come see the lifestyle of how their brothers or sisters are living, and yet they go back and paint a different picture. They don't tell them exactly how it is.
You know, one of the biggest things for me is when you go back home, they're living a life of luxury, as in there might be 5 people living in a house in the village. One person does a couple of runs of taxis and they're done for the day. They're really, really not working the 15, 20 hours that... Meanwhile, we in the UK are working so many hours that we'll put our own health... we won't worry about our health. We're like robots. I
think a lot of them have this thing where they see, like, let's say if we go abroad, it might have taken 5 years to save up to go abroad, and obviously you go there with a certain amount of money because you go there to do your shopping, bits and bobs, in order to like re-kit yourself out. So they just see that thing of like, yo, these guys have got so much money. Look at what they're doing. So then I think they take away that image more, and therefore think like they're loaded. You know what I mean? Because I know of an example of one person that came to the UK saying, mate, you guys have got an amazing life. Money grows on trees, left, right, centre. After 2 years of being in the UK, he went back. He goes, it's too hard. He goes, you pay bills, you come home, you sleep, you get up, you go work, pay bills. He goes, there's no life. You know what I mean? Whereas most people that are there are thinking that, it's easy. It's like, you just click, your money is there.
They don't see how hard we work here. That's
Agreed.
the key. They just see, even Facebook, you only post all the good things in your life. So when there's weddings, parties, when you're enjoying your life, that's what you share on social media.
Yeah.
So when people in India see that, they think we've got such a glamorous life here, but they don't see the hard effort and hours and what it takes to actually build all that. And obviously when we go abroad, obviously you take money with you, you're going to go and have a nice holiday.
Yeah.
So they see all this social media about how life's great over here. Then they see you turn up with money.
I think
it's just...
Yeah, I think for me, I'll be honest, in Islam, we're taught to take care of our parents. That is really, really important. Yeah. However, don't neglect your own family. You're having children. You've got a wife to take care of. You've got bills to pay, and you're actually not even doing what Islam tells you to do, which is be that man, pay for your family. However, you're prioritising the funding that goes abroad before you're taking care of what needs to be taken care of in the UK, which is your family.
Do you think it's keeping up with the Joneses? Do you think people do it to show off? Like
it's a bit of
they
that.
Want to keep sending money abroad to say we've done this abroad.
It's keeping the face,
yes.
And I agree with that. And I do think it's also got part and parcel of the whole thing of when the older generation came in the early teenage years or 10, 11, whatever. It was kind of drilled in. You are going to basically provide for the family and also be a pillar. So therefore, that obligation, and it's that horse-drawn carriage thing again, where they basically think to themselves like, I have to do this, I have to, and then it becomes a level of it's ingrained into them to think that this is my obligation. So therefore, they have to maintain it, even if they know that advantage could be taken of them and other bits and bobs. but they just will keep at it. If you know what I mean, it's kind of becomes a bad habit in
It
essence.
becomes an
You
expectation,
know what I mean? But
doesn't it?
it is if you can help your family, by all means, alhamdulillah, if you're able to. It's
Yeah.
you know, I think you should. You know what I mean? But I don't think it should be to the detriment of your own, as well as neglect as well. You know what I mean? That sister was saying earlier.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. It's not just even taking care of your parents abroad. It's taking care of your
The wider.
extended family and their families and their families. And where do you draw the line?
Mm.
You know, it's like mixing culture and Islam
Yes, 100%.
together, rather than being like, Sister Frida said, like, you should be Islamic and, looking after your own first and your parents, which are your priority. But it's like
Absolutely.
going to basically you're looking after a neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I mean, if you can afford it, all I'm saying is take care of your home first, your marriage, your relationship, your children, before you
I agree with you. Yeah.
because unfortunately that mindset of looking after the people abroad and not worrying, literally marriages are breaking down, children are being traumatized. It was very, very sad times. I saw a lot of it while I was growing up. I mean, I'm 52 years old now, so you can imagine. I don't think it happens as much now to the extent that how it used to happen.
I think
Yes, Anita.
also, when you keep sending money back home, what exactly is happening with that money? Are you spoiling that generation there? Because, I'm talking about India. I've definitely heard from lots of people that I work with here as well. I look after a lot of pregnant women, but they also share stories with me that they send money back home to their mums, dads. Their brothers are now, drugs is a huge problem because that money keeps coming in, that it's actually spoiling the families back home as well. So some of them are drug dependent or alcoholics, and they don't work because they don't, how are they funding that? It's because you keep sending the money over there. And that it can cause more problems sometimes.
I know also a lot of people that whose parents have bought properties abroad, and now it's an actual issue for the adults who have got families. I've got cousins in this situation that have said to me, "Oh, sister, I'm not interested in going back to India. I really am not. The future, our generation, they don't want to go to India or Pakistan every holiday.
Yeah.
Years ago, it was you only went your holiday, India, your holiday, Pakistan. That was it. Now's generation, they're doing the Turkey trips, they're doing the Morocco, they're going abroad and travelling and seeing the world. So it actually becomes a big hindrance in their life. Suddenly their parents have created this property abroad, and now they've got the response, and then maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took them, and now the children that are like in their 40s 50s have got the headache of a property that they're not interested in.
That's true.
They don't even understand the the dynamics of
That's the big one.
the solicitor and all, the legalities.
Yeah.
They don't understand it. So it's like, you know what? I'm not interested. I'm just wash my hands on that property because it's just too much.
Yeah. That's a shame, isn't it? But do you think then that the younger generations then, are they still under the same obligations to send money back home? Do you think they would do that?
No.
Considering
No.
what their parents did, how they
No.
supported their family
No.
members?
I think because they were a lot of them, like for example, I witnessed it myself. I was the first hand. I've experienced it, let alone witness.
Yeah.
My dad used to send money abroad, and unfortunately, prioritise that than his own family. It had a huge impact on a lot of things. That's why I say I suffered a lot of trauma myself. So I come from a place, but I don't think the generation that is coming up now, they would accept it.
No, I wouldn't.
They
I wouldn't
wouldn't.
either.
No.
Because what I find usually is that you start supporting the members of the family back home, and they see it as a norm that you're supposed to do it all the time, every month, or whenever they request it and stuff like that. But then when do you actually draw the line? I mean, I'm one of those people that I can't say no to anybody. Yeah. If they've asked for something, I'll give them what I can. So how do we get the message out to people how we can draw the line without upsetting the other person on the other end?
I think for me, it's just help where you can. If somebody's needy and they desperately need your
Yeah.
help, and you've got a bit of extra and you can help, you should help. You should avoid that, but don't make them aware that it's not going to be like every time.
Yeah, when it comes to things like zakat every year,
Yeah.
you could send
Yeah.
it out to India,
Yeah.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
You know, that's usually quite a lot of money within the families that, you know, that's your charity. Those of you that don't know what zakat is, that's charity.
Yeah, thank you, Frida. So let's be real. So some of our relatives obviously think that we're secretly millionaires here in the UK. So should there be limits or conditions on how we send?
I think it should be within reasonable of what you're happy with as well, but nothing that has a detrimental effect. You know what I mean? Because obviously, if you got a family that's in distress or needs help, you know, we obviously would want to do that, but you can't just do it and get it from magically from thin air or take a loan out and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you should set yourself up for failure while helping others.
Yeah.
You should do it part and parcel of, you know.
Like, you can contribute, you know, we all know that in Islam, getting married is part of our deen, half of our deen when you've got married.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do a contribution to somebody's marriage. You know, these sort of significant
Yes.
occasions that
Yeah.
have a huge impact.
Yeah.
It's about helping the right people, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you can afford it and you want to send it, if your family is comfortable back home, really, should you keep sending it and spoiling them? Or could you actually help out other people who genuinely need that money? It might
Yeah.
be for education. It could just be
Yeah.
for putting food on the table. You know, really make a difference. in
Medical
somebody's
conditions
life.
and things
Yeah.
like that. Definitely, yeah.
Can I just add? Sorry,
Yes.
it's the younger generation, they tend to send their charity across a number of organizations,
Yeah.
so they're not always going to be sending it back to Pakistan, India, or Bangladesh. They're going to be like sending it, maybe, there's charities in the UK,
Yeah.
it could
Penny
be
appeal and
charities in the
stuff like
Middle
that, yeah.
East and so on. So they kind of look into that as well, distributing their money, fairly across to other organizations as well. So that plays a part as well.
Obviously, helping is great, but are we hurting ourselves financially? Are we putting ourselves or our children at risk of depriving them of
It
things?
used to, that was the case years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think it is now.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with
Okay.
that.
Okay, so has sending money then created a culture of dependency rather than support?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at what
Yeah.
point does helping turn into enabling then?
I think it's something that we've all said, especially Sister Sunita, with the whole thing of like, once you do it and it becomes such a routine and then an obligation, then I think, they will, in essence, like whoever family members or whoever it is, I think they
Yeah.
just rely on it a bit too much. So I don't think it's too much of a problem now with the now generation. As Sister said, Zainab said that it's more, people are distributing it accordingly. So again, I think, you should help family members. However, it shouldn't be like a full obligation of like, oh, I need this. Oh, I need to build a new room. Can I have this? Oh, I need to have my bathroom sorted. Can I have this? Because I believe it was kind of on that
Yeah.
on that
And-
level back in
and
the
Still
day.
is though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And can I just say, I think years ago there was a lot more people coming from back home to get married.
Yeah.
And there was far more. Whereas now it is so expensive, and there's so many legalities to get people across. Yeah, the people that come from abroad then feel sort of a sense of like responsibility to sort of help their brothers and sisters, their families, their mums and everybody back home, yeah. But I don't think we're getting as many people coming from overseas to get married like they used to because of the expense, because of
Yeah.
all the complications. So
But what we are seeing for each day might not be for marriage, but we're getting a lot of students coming. I meet students every day who come here for a better life. They come here as students, but they're not actually studying anything. They work, they get pregnant, they just want to stay in the UK. I'm just talking about people that I meet, to be honest. But the financial implication of that, because a lot of them have sold, land, they've sold quite a lot of whatever they've had to get here. And then when they get here, they realise how difficult life is. I've had lots of pregnant women that just, they break down, they're in tears because they regret that decision that they've made. They said, we were sold a dream, we've been sold, you can come here, you can work, you can study. And when they get here and financially they can't afford it, some of the situations that I come across really are really sad.
I could
bless.
imagine.
Yeah.
And I've heard also that so many people, when you speak to them, they pay so many thousand rupees
Yeah.
just to come here.
Yes.
And then when they come here, it's a different reality for them,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And it's not
100%.
just from our countries. I meet people from all different backgrounds. The same thing is happening with our, African nations.
Wow.
Lots of people I meet from all different backgrounds, different faiths. It's a very similar situation where they do come here, they sell whatever they can to get here, so that all their money's gone, and they come here and they realise life isn't as great as what they expected it to be.
Can I just add to that?
Yep.
Following what you said, Sunita, in terms of individuals turning to other devices to kind of gain money.
Yes.
So we do see a lot of people who've committed crime end up in prison because they can't fund themselves.
Or,
That's
or
so
going
sad.
to a really sad, the dark side of life, if you like.
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
women end up, they've ended up doing prostitution, they've ended up doing drugs. They're being, some people keep them in the homes and just expect them to cook and clean for them. So there's a lot of slave labour going on, lots of issues that are really undercover and not really spoken about. But these are the realities of the cost implications that it has of being here and you're not from this country.
Right. Interesting. So we're going towards a break. So obviously we realise that sending money is fine, but let's make sure we're not just funding someone's next luxury handbag or designer shoe collection while we're out here struggling even to pay our own mortgage. Now we're going straight into a break, and then we will see you very shortly. 5 seconds. Right, welcome back to Lou's Sisters, and we are going to be continuing with our topics of discussion, and we're going to move straight on to spiritual or superstitious. What do you believe? Now, from the evil eye to don't cut your nails at night to don't sweep or hoover the floor at night, some of us grew up hearing all sorts of superstitions. But how much of it do we actually believe? Or have we been brainwashed by our aunties? Now, is it real? Or are we just holding on to childhood fears? And what's the difference between being spiritually aware and just plain superstitious? So, panel, do you believe in the evil eye? Or is it just paranoia?
See, I think like superstition in general, I don't think is right. I think it's like a form of they say it's like a form of shirk. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, like you have got your Quran, you've got guidance and stuff like that to be more spiritual. So there's knowledge and information for you. But superstition of like walking on the ladders and all that, no. Evil eye, I get it. Nazar, stuff like that. That's something I do.
Yeah.
I don't think that's comes under the superstition. I think that's something a bit different. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. It just for me, it's like I'm not superstitious. I don't think to myself like, oh, if I walk through there, something's gonna happen or whatnot. I just, for my understanding, I just do my prayers. Either go to see something and jobs are good, and basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
I was just gonna say that.
yeah.
I think the superstition goes out the window once you
Yeah.
read your Ayat al-Kursi.
Yeah, done.
I believe evil eyes, it happens because it happened on our prophet, peace
Yes.
be upon him, and the
So,
revelation, the revelation of the four golds for that. But in terms of superstition, where people like cross the road because they've seen a black cat or somebody sneezed or something, so no, I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
What about when an auntie gives you the evil eye or the side eye, as they call it, at a wedding or wherever you see it? What would you make out of that?
I'd just ignore it, to be honest. I'm not superstitious at all. I've grown up with a lot of superstitions. I'm aware of, in our culture they say things like don't wash your hair on a certain day. And when I questioned it, I was like, Mum, why do you say you can't cut your hair or wash your hair on a Tuesday or a Thursday? There are really no answers for it. It's just what they were told.
They
So I
were
think
told, yeah.
it's more of a cultural thing that people used to say and do, and it just gets passed on and passed on. But I wash my hair every day. I'm not.
So superstition for me is like, for example, if you've got a cyst in your eye or your eyes twitching.
Oh, yes, the
Yeah.
twitching eye, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what do they say? If your left eye twitches, you're gonna meet the man of your life. Well,
Really?
That's not how I remember it.
if the left eye twitches, you're gonna meet the love of your life.
Yeah.
Everybody's twitching now. No, I'm not superstitious as such, but evil eye, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm really, really strong on evil eye.
Yeah.
There's people that will be very envious of your lifestyle. People want what you've got. It might come from a place of love. It's crazy, but there can be like sort of, oh, you're just so beautiful. You're just so beautiful, and that can turn into your nazar.
Yes.
As they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in that, and that's why I say be careful what you put out there. Be careful, protect yourself, pray always, and just be mindful that people, like when people want to show off their marriage or their husband or their children
Or their lifestyle or whatever
and
it is,
then
yeah.
On the back end of evil eye, I also do believe in, people do witchcraft and do things. So you putting your children out there. If somebody wants something for you to go do, Lally, trust me, there's potions and
Gosh.
that's the other part of evil eye.
No, you've been watching too many Bollywood movies, you have, haven't you?
But trust me, it's real.
It is. So, have any of you then ever experienced a spiritual experience, shall I say, yourselves?
So, are we
Or someone that you might know?
I felt presence of people that have passed. I used to work, this is years ago, I used to work in a nursing home before I even started my nurse training. and strange things would happen in nursing homes, and I can only explain it by there must be another side that we can't see. I remember a lady had passed away. Her name was Dorothy, and she always used to sit in this specific chair. And one of the days, somebody opened the door, and he had like a glass in the door. And as the glass opened, and they opened it really slowly, I could see that reflection of where she used to sit. And I'm telling you, I saw Dorothy in that.
Oh
chair.
my God.
Oh my God.
Things like that. I used to get a bit spooked out. And you know, this one particular gentleman was he was going to pass away, and literally moments before he passed, he kept saying, I was in the room with him, and he said, "Oh, what's that writing up there?" And I was like, "What writing?" And he was spelling out the words DEATH, and he could see it clearly written on the wall in front of him. And I was thinking, "Oh my God, I don't like this." But I think that kind of dark side of experiencing things like that, but only in the nursing home. So when I left work in there, nothing ever strange happened. But sometimes I have felt like, if I'm thinking of like my ex-father-in-law when he passed away, I do remember he used to smoke, and they were talking about him, and I could smell smoke, and I kept thinking, is that just me or what? You know, some things I just can't explain. So I do think there's something out there, but I'm not sure I can explain it very well. So that's my experience with spirituality, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
It comes down to jinns and things like
Oh
that.
God, yes.
I wanted to
Gets
say
scary.
But they do exist, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, that's why they say, you know, at certain group time, make sure you cover your hair before
Make
you
sure
go
you
outside.
close the doors.
And people wonder why, you know, you're told to cover, but that I was always told there's a time that their time is a certain time.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's why you don't just put your luscious hair out there.
Mm.
There is a reason. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do, it's for a real good reason.
Yeah, and that to go out as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're meant to shut your doors and get your kids inside at that time.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
kids don't understand that though, do they?
Yeah.
No matter how much you tell them to come in at certain times and not to be out there, but no, kids will be kids. So, what's the weirdest superstition then that you've ever heard? Now, someone obviously told me once that eating straight out of the pot makes you stubborn. Now, do I look stubborn to you at all? No?
You've eaten
Have
from
you
that pot,
heard
haven't
any
you?
weirdest superstitions yourselves?
I think one that I laughed with my husband about the other day was don't walk over somebody because they won't grow. And he stepped over my son's leg, and I said his leg's not going to grow now. And we were both laughing our heads off, but that's a strange one I can think of.
But you know what? That's quite common.
Is it?
Yeah. I think a lot of like with the Pakistanis and the Middle Eastern people do that as well, saying that you know if you go over somebody, you got to go back the other way, so
Yeah.
they're not going to grow.
I
It's going to
remember-
stunt their
yeah.
growth apparently.
Well, he's growing. He's getting nice and tall. So
That's good.
it's not true.
Right. Okay. Now, obviously, moving on then to superstitions. Are they just cultural then, or are they just myths passed down? What do you make out of that?
Say they're a bit of both. You got cultural stuff like to do with like in the village and stuff. I remember like my nan would say, "Oh, you know, if you can't go out the night time because if you hear like you know this bell or jingling or whatnot, that means this or that means that type of thing."
Yeah.
But then I also think that it's like mythology as well at the same time because it was ways to in essence to kind of say to kids, don't do this don't do this or do that type of thing. So I think there's a basis of like truth in certain things for protection or whatnot, but I think a lot of it is just as the word suggests, it is superstition. It is something. It's just like fiction, if you know what I mean. So it's like you know, maybe might be like good little stories or morals to get out of it, but most of it is just one of these things that like for me, superstition apart from the evil eye, it's not really applicable because as long as inshallah I do my prayers and stuff and read al-Qur'an or whatnot, you know,
that's it, yeah.
I feel like I'm protected because you know I feel like a comfort as well at the same time. So that's why like you know, for me, alhamdulillah, like you know, it's hunky dory.
Okay, so do we let these beliefs then control our lives too much? What do you think? Or are we just spiritually aware, or are we just low-key scared of shadows?
I think the older generation definitely were more superstitious and let these things kind of affect the way they act, the judgment and stuff like that. You know, so yeah. And then maybe with the younger generation, I don't know, maybe watching too many movies or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of horrors out there. So
But with the youngsters, do you think it's now turned into what's the word I'm looking for? When they believe that you attract it, you know, it's a lot of I can't think of the
bad
word.
energy and all that.
Yeah, they think like if you think a lot about things, it will happen.
Manifest.
That's the word I'm looking for.
That's
Do you think it's turned into that? But really, that is the old-fashioned like evil eye or spiritual beliefs that people used to have.
I think people still got some of them, but just they're probably calling it different names.
Yeah.
You know? But I think in terms of like horror movies and stuff, they say, if you watch too many horror movies, you know, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, so then are you attracting it?
yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
possibly.
That's how the youngsters look at it, I think.
I just think that, you know, like if it's a superstition, and it's just like sort of a belief, it's a cultural.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas when it's Islamic, when they say evil eye, it's actually written in the Quran. Yeah. That is a different. We're talking about absolutely. So I think this is where I'd rather be standing up to what is written in the Quran Sharif and looking at what is reality, you know, not ignoring the fact that there are genes that, you know, like I've known people that they've been possessed. Absolutely. They've clashed with jinn. And then suddenly they're coming, even their vocabulary sounds like a man.
Oh, God.
I've seen some, and that's why I'm very much about, you know, there's a reason why we cover our hair. There's a reason why we do what we do. There's a reason why we don't go out at certain times. There's a reason, and that is in the Quran Sharif. As far as superstition, you take it or you leave it.
You empower it yourself, basically.
Absolutely.
In a sense, you know what I mean?
Lovely. Right, so at the end of the day, whether you believe in spirits or not, one thing is for sure, nobody's ever seen aunties run faster than when a shoe lands upside down. Right, okay, yeah, that's one of them as well, isn't it? If you see a shoe upside down, then what you got to do, you got to make sure it faces the right way, doesn't it? Yeah.
I've never heard that.
I have. It, like, you know, when every time I used to go to the mosque when I was a child, my parents always says, if you see a shoe upside down, just make sure
flip
face
it back.
it. Because they're saying it faces God otherwise, isn't it? The back of the shoe.
That's interesting. That's the reason. I've heard that too, actually, growing up.
Yeah.
That's something I've heard.
So that's something I've always, whenever I see a shoe upside, even at home when people are taking their shoes off and they're coming in, and anyone that I see accidentally turned over, I make sure I flip it the other way. Yeah. So, on that note then, let's move on to our third topic. So, mother-in-law's best friends or worst nightmares. The mother-in-law. Now, she can be your second mum, your biggest support, or your worst enemy. So, are mother-in-laws really as bad as Bollywood or Lollywood movies make them out to be? Or are we the ones who need to be more patient? So let's talk about this then. So what makes a good mother-in-law, first of all, then?
I personally, from my own experience, I think obviously you can have bad ones, whatnot, but alhamdulillah, I'm very lucky, to be honest with you. My mother-in-law's absolutely amazing, literally like a second mom.
Oh, bless.
Honestly, now she's really great. I always say she treats me golden, you know what I mean? So I can't knock that. So I just think it's more experience, maybe how you interact. But yeah, I could just go on base what I've seen for myself.
I
you know
actually think it stems from, you know, right at the start when a relationship. I've heard like my husband will absolutely adored my mum, and my mum adored him.
Oh,
and
bless.
He would never ever call her anything but mummy. But I think the problem what arises is when people address the mother-in-law as auntie, or they just refuse to call her mum because it's not their mum, because it's not their birth, you know, biological mother.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the problem arises, when you put these sort of these sort of things in between.
I agree with you, Fareed.
Whereas
I think before you can make any comment on your mother-in-law, I think you need to look at yourself. And I think if you're not receiving, for example, if you're going to call your mother-in-law auntie, then you're not giving her that respect in the first place. I understand, yes, it's not your mom, Nobody.
Yeah.
Your mom will only ever be your mom.
Mm.
Your mother-in-law. I think that delusion of
Oh,
people saying it's my daughter, not my daughter-in-law. I don't even agree with that.
No.
I think
Yeah.
you need to give
Absolutely.
every relationship the respect and due diligence that it's due.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
And I agree with that because my mother-in-law's lovely.
yeah.
And I don't call her auntie. But you know, it depends what kind of relationship you build with the family
Yeah.
Yeah.
as well. So it's give and take, really, isn't it?
100%.
So, is there then a secret recipe to having a chilled mother-in-law, or is it just luck then?
No, I think it's love and respect,
Yeah.
relationships,
Mm.
building that,
Especially the way they see how you are with their child as well. I think that has a profound effect. You know what I mean? If they see the way, like, you know, treat them with love, respect, you've got a good household,
Yeah.
I think they'll be much more, like, happy with that and content with you as well.
like I can see that my mother-in-law, I can see that she absolutely adores me because of how I have, what I've brought to the table as far as her son. She wants the best for her son.
No, that's bang on. Because in my
That-
household, like, my mom's, I'm the baby, so I'm the favourite. But then my wife is now, like, the favourite's favourite type of thing, you know what I mean? And it's really funny because, like, we have a little joke saying that, you know what I mean? Like she is the favourite now, you know what I mean? Which is lovely, if you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I know. I used to always say to my mummy, I would be like, "Mum, will you tell my hubby tell him to sort himself out?" She would be sticking up for him. You've heard of the son-in-law and the mummy relationship. He couldn't do anything wrong. She just adored him.
That's good.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Right. So, are daughter-in-laws then expected to do too much then? So, why is it always the wife who has to win over the mother-in-law, but not the husband? What about those relationships?
I think quite a lot is, like, cultural as well. Because it's kind of like that stigma or, like, kind of like that judgment that's already been there, like, you know, there has to be here a lot back in the day. From what I've heard, a lot of this, it was like, you know, we've got a new slave in the household, we've got a new like a cleaner in the household, a new cook in the household. The sole responsibility was put onto that person, like, in essence, like a bit of a burden, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that was quite stressed in, like, culture, movies, every type of thing. It was kind of like it is expected, so therefore it will happen. But again, I do think things are different now, or it's from people that I know, it's not as prevalent. So maybe I'm just seeing from one angle, but alhamdulillah, like, I don't think it is as.
There's got to be give and take, hasn't there? You
Yes.
can't expect a daughter-in-law to come in and take on the full duties of the entire house.
Yeah.
Because she might have her own career. She might, she's going to have children at some point. She's got her own life to live as well.
I think
Balance.
although I do think it must be really, really hard. I mean, I have not experienced this myself, but for a daughter-in-law to come into a house where the mother-in-law and the father-in-law and she's got to suddenly go into that household, and she's because there's a lot of young girls that are getting married and their husbands can't put a roof over their heads, so it's the mother-in-law and father-in-law's property that they're living in as a couple. And I think the dynamics completely changed because suddenly you're having to dress appropriately when you're coming downstairs. It might have been a different thing when you're in your own
parents,
home,
yeah,
in your
yeah.
own parents. And it might be your mother-in-law that's pulling you up on it and saying to you, hold on, you need to, before you come down, make sure you're dressed appropriate. And that's where there could be some conflict because the daughter-in-law could feel like, oh, mommy's always telling me this and saying, do you know what I mean? So I think, but obviously that's why people want to live in their own properties.
Yeah.
But it's the whole dynamics of, and sometimes when you're living with your loved ones too closely, it can create awkward situations.
It can, yeah.
It can unfortunately ruin the relationships.
Talk about ruining. Sorry, go on.
Sorry,
Come
I
in.
was just going to say that, in terms of talk about ruining relationships, it has kind of happened in, individuals' lives that I know, that, the dynamics have become toxic.
Yeah.
And it has even led to, like, the breakup of the marriage. So, there could be, like, the mother-in-law who just feels that, the daughter-in-law's taking the son away.
So she's trying to keep control over it and
Yes.
hold that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get what you mean.
I know where you're coming from because one typical example is Amir Khan and Farial Makdoum.
Yeah.
Obviously, they had this particular situation where Amir Khan's family, they're sort of down to earth people, you know, whereas Fariel lived the high life back in America and stuff like that. So she was used to a different lifestyle compared to Amir Khan's family. And obviously, I know Amir Khan's family, the mother and the father didn't quite like or see how appropriate she was going about doing things and stuff. So they tried to control that. But the opposite effect happened where she just took control of the son, well, her husband, and cut ties with the in-laws. So obviously these sort of things happen. But again, they've sorted the issues out. Took them a while. But on that then, do mother-in-laws actually secretly compete for their son's attention?
I think if that's what they're going to do, just don't get married. If they're getting their son married, don't get them married. Then if you want to baby him all your life,
Yeah.
feed him and look after him, then let him be, and you feed him and look after him as a single man. Then
No, I think you've, I think you've got to understand, like, for example, when my brothers got married, my mum was very much like, right, you've got to become independent, live in your own properties, get yourselves, even while if you've got to live with us, then live with us, but make yourself independent so that you can get your own property, and then you start living your life with your family and start making your family. So I think
it should be.
Yeah, I do agree with that because like when I got married, I remember my mom, she literally was like to my wife, like, now it's your responsibility. So she goes like, because my mom used to, like, bless her, she would phone me as soon as I finished work after about 15 minutes, like, son, where are you? I'm like, oh mom, I'll be on my way home, inshallah. And that was like a routine until I got married. And then as soon as I got married, my mum was like, now your wife's going to phone you.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So alhamdulillah, it was one of these things, knowing when to leave that responsibility. It's not that the person doesn't care, it's the fact they know that you are your individual, you can have your household, and this is how life should progress.
And it's giving you that space as well.
100%.
You know, once you become a couple, you need to respect each other's boundaries.
Of course.
And have that relationship and build on it going forward.
Yeah.
You can't. I think when you live with your in-laws, it does complicate things. And I think the lines are all blurred. You know, everybody wants different things. Their expectations are different of each other.
But equally, you've got to respect the fact
Absolutely.
that if you're going to live in your mummy and daddy's house, you
There
want
you
to
go,
get
their house.
married. Either don't get married till you can afford to move out and get your own place, or if you're going to live with mum and dad, then you need to respect the fact that there will be some certain rules.
Yeah,
it's just
their
part
house.
of life.
Yeah, 100%.
It is part of life, you're right. So before we move on to the same topic, I will be talking a bit more about mums and their sons as well. And we will also be talking about tensions maybe within the family and how to face them. And we'll also be talking about the evil mother-in-law as well. So we are going to go straight into a break. And if anybody wants to call in, feel free to do that on 01902 972 150, or even drop us a text on 074 404 420 and we'd love to hear from you. Okay, welcome back to Lou's Sisters. You are tuned into Ramadan Radio Wolves on 87.8 FM. Right, we were talking about mother-in-laws, best friends, or worst nightmares. Now, we are going to jump on to another question in relating to this, and I want to know from my panel, do mother-in-laws secretly compete for their son's attention? So tell me why some mums like to see their son as their second husband.
I think from what probably again I know I keep coming back to this, but I think it's more of an old generation thing. I think in essence they raise their son as the ideal man. You know what I mean? So therefore that then kind of like blurs the lines of like I gotta keep this image pristine or whatnot. My little boy type of thing. So I think probably that might be something that's contributing factor towards like how they don't want to let go of that, like
That
thing.
the mother is being protective over the
type
son.
of thing maybe.
I just want to add to that. I just feel that, if they've had like a bad marriage and they haven't had certain things happen for them, and then the daughter-in-law comes in and she's getting all this nice treatment from their son, I think that's a bit of jealousy. And you want to kind of say, why I never got that. Why is
That's
she
where the
getting-
tension builds in, doesn't it? Yeah.
I think,
Yep,
I
Salita?
think if the mother-in-law herself had a good relationship with her mother-in-law, I think that makes a huge difference. So I think she's had a good example then of what it's like to be the daughter-in-law of a good mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So then she will replicate that herself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if the mother-in-law is toxic, it's probably because her mother-in-law was toxic. But
Yeah.
then that generational trauma needs to stop.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is where there's a problem especially in the Asian community, where they've not sought counselling or therapy to deal with trauma, and it's
quite a taboo
it's
thing.
behaviour that continues, just like everything else. Domestic violence. You see a lot of that. It's just learnt behaviour. Whereas when you've had a good example, like my mommy and her mother-in-law had the best relationship ever, and and my sister-in-law and my mommy were like best friends. My mommy adored her, So I think it's all stems down to usually there's
Experience.
there's a bigger agenda and it needs help, therapy.
Yeah, but can you imagine saying to the older generation, you need therapy?
They're not believing things like that anyway, do they?
No.
Taboo subject, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So what do you think then? Should husbands then step in when there's tension between the mother-in-law and the wife?
Yeah.
I definitely think so. I think it's something that as a quality as a man you should have. You should be able to know what's right from what's wrong, but do it in a tentative way with respect at the end of the day, because both people love you in the situation. Both people believe they're doing it right, so you have to be respectful, be correct. If you need to have guidance, go to someone with more knowledge. Use your Islamic beliefs and stuff like that. That will help guide you in essence. So I just think it's one of these things that you just got to be a bit more. You can't put your head in the sand and think like it will somehow resolve or it's between them type of thing. It's one of these things that you're the binding factor in this situation, so you need to go help sort it out. And it's always for the best as well. But then I just think it's down to how you're raised as well, understanding.
Yeah, you know what? I think, like you said, bro, down to how you're raised, and some of the times people create issues. Like there's a big thing going on about, parents. And, I'm the daughter-in-law and we shouldn't have to look after your parents. In Islam, it says you're the son, so you have to look after. Yes, but we're human beings. We should have some compassion for and respect. And this is what you call about building relationships. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, my mom, she died in the month of Ramadan 2 years ago. But prior to that, my sister-in-law and my brother took a huge part in looking after her, and my sister-in-law, honestly, the amount she did for my mummy, I've got a lot of respect for her,
we've got a call, just bear with me. Hello, you're tuned into Ramadan Radio. Wa alaikum salam.
Hello, it's Shabnam. I haven't really heard much because I'm at work, but Can you just tell me what the topic is, and I'll quickly put my input.
Right, so basically, we're talking about mother in laws, best friends, or worst nightmares. And the topic area that we are touching on now is should husbands step up when there's tension between the mother in law and the wife?
Ah, I see. Okay. I will say, if there is if there is tension between the in-laws,
Your line's not
not
very clear. I
usually.
don't know whether you want to ring back because you're cutting off, or maybe bad reception.
Let me call you back when I've got better.
Oh, I can hear you
Thank
now
you.
if you want to carry on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, my point of view would be if you can avoid situations, for example, if there's conflict between maybe the in-laws and it doesn't affect you, very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Equally, if it did involve me, I would try and explain myself in a calm manner.
Mm-hmm.
Also, understand the other side and sit down and talk it through, let's say over a cup of desi chai. When you're in a calm environment, you can de escalate matters really quickly. I've seen that with my in laws. It didn't affect me, but as a younger daughter in law, I just sat down and I said, surely, brothers, you can all sort this out. And you know, they did. And it was so beautiful. They took on board what I said, knowing that whatever I was saying was for the best of that family. And it's always about like how you deal with situations, you know. If you've been in that family, you know how that family is. Are they prepared to listen? Will they compromise? Do you need to step back? Do you need to get other people involved? You know, things like that.
Mm.
There's always a solution to a problem. And, you know, with families, it can happen. It does happen, but there is a way forward. And if we follow Islam as well, you know, etiquette in communication, respect, understanding, listening, you can resolve a situation.
I totally agree with you there, Shabnam. But what about when you're in a scenario where you have the daughter-in-law doing everything and she's being, nagged at by the mother-in-law, and then you have the husband who knows that his wife is in the right, with all the intentions that she's got, looking after the family and everything, and respecting the family values, but then he sides with his mom over the wife. You get
That's a
these sort of
very, very
scenarios,
difficult.
everyday scenarios like this, and then obviously friction, tension is built up. So how do we alleviate all that?
First and foremost, the husband has to listen to his wife. If he knows his wife well
Mm.
and knows that his wife doesn't come running back and forth for silly things, and he will listen to his wife. If he's not, it's really difficult in a family. I can't talk about anything that I've seen in my life, but how I would move would be speak to my husband. I'll ask him to speak to the mother-in-law, his mum.
Mm-hmm.
If he can resolve it with his mum, if it's getting out of hand, I would suggest to move out, because at the end of the day, we care for our in-laws because we want to. But
Mm.
if there's a misunderstanding in communication and it's affecting, like it's got a detrimental effect on his wife, then you have to make a decision moving forward what you're going to do, because that's what you don't want in your marriage is your in-laws are not understanding what you're thinking. And I will say, if you're a good daughter-in-law and the husband can't see all that, you do need to speak to your husband. And just why should the daughter-in-law have to do everything? You know, like you're a family unit. I'm very fortunate that my children's dad didn't want to live. He wanted us to be on our own, so I never had a problem because I didn't live with my in-laws, and I love them anyway to bits. I still do to this day. But this is how I would move forward in life. If the husband cannot understand his wife's concerns, then it's about time to reevaluate what actually is going on in that household.
Right, lovely. Thank you, Shabnam. Is there anything else you'd like to say on the matter?
Do you want to say, I really missed your shows. Look, I'm at work. I just came out. I thought, let me just contribute my 5 little 10 minutes.
Oh,
But
bless you.
don't, honestly, have a lovely day, and mashallah, keep doing what you guys are all doing. And I'll try and catch up next weekend. I'm not working next weekend,
Oh,
inshallah.
bless you.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much, sister.
Take care, everyone.
Thank
Assalamu
you.
alaikum.
Take care.
Walaikum
Wa
salam.
alaikum salam. That was our lovely Shabnam there taking part in the topic. So I totally agree with her where she's saying, obviously, where the husband needs to stand up for the wife, but situations lead, well, in some family households I've seen where the husband doesn't stand up and looks after his wife. Okay, there is an option of moving out, which is quite simply, again, it's a matter that needs to be discussed between the husband and wife to move out and sort of to keep all the conflicts at bay. But what happens in the situation where the husband then doesn't want to move out?
Well,
He's got his parents, he's more concerned about that they're under his roof and that the
Well-
wife does everything.
ultimately, it's just going to affect his marriage.
Mm.
That's it.
Yeah.
His peace. It's going to affect his peace.
I think
And-
he's sorry. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, and really and truly, if the mother-in-law actually really did care, she would fix up. It's as simple
But then
as
you get mother-in-laws who don't fix up, who
well,
just
then it's either going to end up in a very sad divorce.
Yeah.
Plus, it's one of these things that
hit the nail on the head.
if you just kind of like if you think the option is just to move out, it's kind of bearing this. It's not really dealing with the problem. So therefore, like moving out could be good, but you should also still be able to have a good discussion or somehow bring it up to make it a more nicer situation. Because again, just moving out, then people just drift apart. You know what I mean? Because then it'll be like it was
And-
left with tension, if you know what I mean.
And I wonder what viewers would think about, like, you've lived as a couple in your house, and then you've got mommy. She's very old. She gets to the stage where she's older, and then suddenly she's got to move into your house, and suddenly you've got to look after her as the daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
And that happened. That
Yeah.
scenario
Yeah.
did
On the flip side, yes,
that
definitely.
actually happened
Yeah.
in my family. My mum lived a very independent lifestyle, but then when she got to probably about in her late 60s, 70s, she wasn't managing herself as well, so she decided that it would be better to move into my brother's and my sister-in-law's house.
Yeah.
Now, lucky for my sister-in-law, they had just created a new bedroom, an extension, and they actually gave that bedroom up to my mum.
Oh, sweet.
That is
That's
so
respect.
that is respect. And
That is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my sister-in-law, like I said, they had the most amazing relationship.
Well, like they say, Jannat lies
Under
between your
Yeah.
mum's feet, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Right. So, is the evil mother-in-law a stereotype unfair then?
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's kind of like an old school go-to, yeah.
I do
Yeah.
think there are some women who are toxic, but they're probably toxic wives as well as toxic mothers,
Yeah.
not just a mother-in-law.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I think again, it comes down to you. You need to look at yourself as a person.
Yeah.
So if you are that person, for example, if that then mother-in-law, if the children move out, and then later on, if she's getting older and then she's expecting them to look after her, that's definitely going to all those problems are going to resurface. So sometimes moving out isn't the answer.
Yeah.
Because you've moved out, and again, that can make or break that relationship, because maybe the problems wasn't the mother-in-law; it could have been between the couple anyway. But if they're fine, they're getting along, they've had years on their own, and then later on down the line, the mother-in-law needs to move back in or wants to move back in with them, that can cause issues too.
Definitely.
So I do think if you are a toxic mother-in-law, you need to look at yourself, because you are going to also need these children in the future.
Exactly. That's
or,
it.
Or
Yeah.
end up being a very lonely woman.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
going to add to that. There are some women that I know
Yeah.
have been like very toxic mother-in-laws,
Yeah.
and that has resulted in their sons or daughters' marriage, ending up in divorce.
Yeah.
And they won't change. I know we
Yeah.
talk about things that you
And-
need to sit down and communicate, and you need to use different ways of kind of resolving. But some people are very stubborn and they won't change.
But-
They won't change.
That's
That's
a
right.
fact.
Like years ago, I think mother-in-laws could be very, very toxic, very controlling. And as a result, this daughter-in-laws had no choice but to do as they were told, Whereas these days, the young girls, they're not going to tolerate that.
Mm.
They're going to either ask for a divorce or move out. Years ago,
Yeah, it was kind of like a stereotype. You know what I mean?
Oh, is it? Sorry. We have got Frida's phone going on. Sorry, Prince.
But yeah, it's kind of like the stereotype of back in the day how
Yeah.
mother-in-laws were. Like it's expected, like that I'm gonna be a bit more stricter, a bit more harsher, or even the whole fact of they're expected to do it now. Like now that they are married in, you will do this type of thing. But again, just what Sister Frida said, I don't think it's a part of that as much prevalent now, and also the mindsets of younger females and stuff now is more knowing themselves in the sense of like, no, I won't be taken advantage like this, and maybe communicating it better. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think it's
years
changed.
ago, you tolerated it and you just,
Bit your tongue.
you were abused mentally. Mental torture was horrendous. And on the back end of it, you could never get out of a marriage because your parents wouldn't allow it. Whereas
And
these
what
days,
society would think as well.
yeah, what society, people will talk about you and all that.
That
These,
look like younger.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So yeah,
last
yeah.
week, yes.
yes.
That's the
Um,
main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll worry about what everybody else thinks and says, that as if they pay our bills. And
Can I just throw a spanner in the works?
Yes.
What about toxic father-in-laws?
Oh, yes.
I have seen that with some, individuals where they've had like a very toxic father-in-law and the mother-in-law's really nice and quiet, and he's the one who's controlling the whole house. So,
So are you talking about where men are concerned about coercive behaviour then?
possibly.
yeah.
Very patriarchal family there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Men are in control.
Yeah.
Probably financially as well, and that's the biggest hold, isn't it?
So what
Yeah.
advice then would we give to a family member where the male is more dominant and there is coercive behaviour involved? What advice would we give to the family? Because I know many families won't admit to it, about their partners. And they might be suffering in secret and nobody knows. But for them to speak up, what advice could we offer them?
I think just speak to your other family members, seek advice, speak to, individuals, I don't know, from the community, if they're in the mosque or, temple or whatever, or in the worst case scenario, if you're being coerced, speak to the police.
I think,
Would-
I think really what we do need to be aware of is nowadays nobody, especially in the UK, you do not need to be living under any form of those type of toxic behaviours, narcissistic behaviours, domestic violence, mental abuse. There are havens out there that will protect you, take you in a safe environment.
Yeah.
And keep you safe and house you as well. Nobody needs to live under those sort of
I
terms.
think the awareness is quite important because I think still, even though it might not be as prevalent, I think a lot of people who are in that situation won't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They'll see it as just like a dark corridor type of thing, but making awareness and showing them that there are basically places like the Haven and platforms
to be
will
honest,
probably draw them a bit out.
to be honest, when you've experienced something like that, it will shake you to your core, to the point it will knock your self-esteem. It will, you won't have the confidence. So, it is about building relationships with even people that you've talked to on social media, or confining a friend or somebody that can help you.
Or trying to draw strength from, like, let's say, faith as well, to know that, once you're more learned in it, what things are correct, as in how people should conduct themselves, families and so forth, and also doing it for your future as well, and your kids and progeny and whatnot, because you want to break that cycle. You want to be able to, not let this like dark cloud be controlling you and the way you move forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite important.
Yeah, if we're talking about what you can do yourself, you've got to become financially independent yourself. Because if that day ever came, yes, the havens are great, but I also know they're fully subscribed. You can't, there's a waiting list, or you can't get in. What are you going to do? If you've got nowhere else to go, you need to be able to financially be able to support yourself. and your children.
Unfortunately, what you've got to remember is, unfortunately, some of these people that are in these situations, they're controlled to the extent they're not allowed to be independent.
That's exactly it.
They're not allowed to have an education. They're not allowed to live life. you know,
Being
the
abused, that is abuse, isn't it?
abuse,
Yeah.
exactly. So for things like that, I'm sure. I mean, I've actually helped families get out of situation.
Yeah.
Got the support of the police, got the support of Haven, and
Yeah.
removed them from toxic
Yeah.
environments.
I think
Um,
it definitely needs to happen, but also be prepared for the repercussions, because if you take that step and if you leave and if you haven't got the support network there, and you know, if there are no places in the Haven, for example, or anywhere else, any other safe house, what are you going to do? So if there's no other family members to support you, it's a really lonely place for a person who's already being abused, and that's
Yeah.
why they stay in these situations, because they know they're being abused.
They don't want to make it.
Yeah.
They
They
think
haven't
it'll get
got that
worse. And
choice to get out.
unfortunately,
And can I just add, the victims of abuse normally go through this 34, 35 times before they actually go and call the police.
Wow.
So it's really important that, you know, us individuals, if we're seeing this within families or within friends or even our neighbours, that we kind of highlight it, or, you know, speak to them, you know, offer them advice, and, you know, contact other agencies.
I think that's
where they can offer
that's
support.
really important what you said, sis. That offering the help and support, because a lot of people turn a blind eye. I think it's not my issue, or I don't want to get involved. But I think that's very like powerful and prevalent, that you have to be the one that, even if you give guidance or give them
Absolutely.
that shoulder to be like I am here, you know, you can have a rattle type of thing.
That's really
I think
important. That's really
that is.
important, because if you know there's a problem and you turn that blind eye,
Yeah.
then you are also part of the problem, because you're enabling that.
That's
To
it.
happen,
Yeah,
Bang on, bang on, sis.
I remember when I used to
Yeah.
work in health and social care. I used to support the health visitors on the community. I saw lots of situations where even women's weren't allowed the benefits that they were given.
Yeah.
They were, you know,
They're entitled. but
they're entitled.
Yeah.
It would
It's taken.
come, but it would be
Somebody else has
taken
it.
by the adults around them, the controlling adults around them.
Yeah.
And so it left them in a very, very vulnerable
I
situation.
think that was quite a norm though, like especially like, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was the norm where like whatever was the household, it was straight given to like the father. It was all the control was there. So I do think that's I don't know if it's as prevalent now, but I know that definitely for back then, because I did a bit of studying myself, that it's quite was like the whole control thing, as in everything had to be given. And it was allocated accordingly. Hence the whole thing of like, you know, sending it back home and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
So and that again is a form of abuse and neglect as well. You know what I mean? So, you know, bless them.
So control obviously still exists to this day. So
Yes.
on a quick note then, so someone who is in a situation like that, what sort of signs should they be looking out for? Because somebody might not know that they are being coercively controlled. So what are the signs that they need to look out for?
It could be somebody who's really withdrawn. They've kind of cut off their family members and friends. They're not
Yeah.
going to many social events.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of very quiet about what's happening in their household.
They got to get
Then-
permission for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're
You know what I
not
mean?
al-
That's
Yeah.
quite
They're not
an
allowed to
important
do
one.
things.
They can't make a judgment call straight away. It's always
Yeah.
like, bear with me a few days. I'll let you know, or I'll see if I can do it, or if I'm
Or
allowed to do
you
it.
know, I've known people that have got married and then been told they're not allowed to go to their mommy and daddy's house.
Yes. Yeah.
I've seen people that weren't allowed to use the telephone call and ring their families. This is the level of control. Yeah, they're not allowed to go out the house. They're not allowed to get on a bus. They're not allowed to. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is,
The
isn't it?
list is
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, and I think obviously having their finances taken away from you, that's one sign that, you
And
know, you're
people's-
being coercively controlled.
People's mood as well. If somebody previously was quite happy, chirpy person, and suddenly they're becoming
Of
really
course,
depressed, really
yeah.
withdrawn, I think that's another sign that that person's struggling in that household. So
Right.
finding out what's going on.
Yeah.
Right, we're coming to the close of another series very shortly. But anyway, mother-in-law's best friends or worst nightmares. Listen, whether she's your bestie or your worst nightmare, just remember she's got years of experience in making your man feel guilty. On that note, we shall see you right after the break.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. We're in our break at the moment, sister. So, if you
Sure.
tell me quickly, is it in response to the topic that we just finished? Is it?
Yes. We can do a news. I'll ring back in the new topic.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thank
That's
you.
great.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Assalamu
Bye.
alaikum.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
What countries are we getting to? Are we getting as far as?
I'll have a look in a minute. 10 seconds. Canada, mainly Canada, and the UK.
Do you get to know how many people are listening?
Only management will be able to see that. Okay, ready. 1 second. Transition over. Right. Okay. Welcome back to Loose Sisters, the final part of the show before we close at 1 o'clock. And make sure you tune in to the Teen Dean talk show, which is at 1 o'clock. They will be talking about Eid celebrations. It'll be their last show for the month of Ramadan. Right, now back to Loose Sisters. We are going to be talking about modesty versus modernity. So, can we have both? Now, in today's world, we want to embrace our culture, faith, and modesty, but at the same time, we want to be stylish, fashionable, and independent as well. So, can we have both? Or does one come at the expense of the other? So, panel, can modesty and modernity go hand in hand?
I think so, yes, definitely. You can be really stylish, wear what you like, and still be modest and cover up. So I don't see that as an issue.
Yeah, I completely agree with this, sis. I think that comes hand in hand.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes, it might be pushed sometimes like in Western society more that, you got to be more modern, you got to look like this or celebrity this or whatnot. But you can have hand in hand, you be modest at the same time. It's just what you're comfortable with and knowing your self-worth as well, which I think is quite important.
Well, as a fashion
Yes.
expert,
Go on, Frida.
let me give my bit. It depends. What are we talking about? Fashion and modern, because are we talking about strappy dresses? Because I have seen some sisters wearing, their tight sort of in sort of lycra material, long dresses that are like figure hugging.
Yeah.
I've even seen them with just straps. Now that's not very modest, but in some cultures they would call that modest because it's long. But in the Islamic culture, we wouldn't call that modest because it's a strappy dress.
Yes, yeah.
So it depends. As far as abayas and things like that go, I think they're getting so trendy. I mean, the latest one that went viral on TikTok had got a hoodie. It was like a bit of a Moroccan theme.
Oh.
It got like a little hat inside that you could just put. And then an overcat on top of that. It looked so funky, so trendy, beautiful, so comfortable, and it went viral, and that's us. And I think the modest look is becoming more acceptable, but it just depends. What do you call modern and what do you call modest? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are we talking about the jeans with just a top?
Yeah.
Would you class that as modest? Because in Islam, we wouldn't call that modest. But in another culture, in Sunita, your culture, you would call that modest. Because in my religion, it's all about covering
up
your bottom area.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it just depends. But I think we can be trendy as well as modest.
Yeah. Right, I agree with you. So,
100%.
sorry.
And you know what?
Yes.
There's a real a feeling of empowerment when you dress modest.
Modest, yeah.
And you know how people accept you? You'd be amazed. Because people do ask for validation, don't they?
They do, yeah.
And it's about feeling comfortable and their self-esteem. But honestly, whenever I put an abaya on, oh boy, I feel so... Forget being suppressed. Who said we're suppressed? I feel so empowered.
And you know your self-worth as well,
Yeah.
which is important.
Absolutely.
Right, so again, we don't have to pick sides then, do we, between modesty and modernity. It's better to be ourselves, really, isn't it? So do we actually judge women then who choose not to dress modestly then?
I do think it happens quite a lot, to be honest with you. I think judging is like a default thing for most people, and it's a skill that you have to control as well as to better yourself as an individual. Because I do feel like a lot of people are kind of like it's their go-to, but once you become a bit more you try and better yourself as an individual. I always try and do it like I always reflect back to this, but I use Islam as my guiding principles. So I always try and just think to myself, all right, would that be a nice thing to do? should I do it? Is it Islamically right? Would I get sins for this? Again, we're not angels, so we're not gonna always like be that. But you should always try and think to yourself, at the end, someone is watching you, and let's say even at my workplace, I always try and set the example for my staff. Because if I'm there like slating someone, because I'll have like some unfortunate people like drug users or whatnot come in and say, "Can I have food?" And I always give them food, and my staff will be like, "Why are you doing that?" And I go, "I'm doing it because they're asking for food, not for money.
Yeah.
And it's something you should do. Someone needs water or food. You shouldn't
Feed
think to
them,
yourself.
yeah.
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
You shouldn't think.
Right,
Like,
we're all going to be at the chippy.
Hey.
Lining up for
Yeah.
some free food.
No, but it's quite important because then you're setting that example to the young uns, and it's a form of da'wat as well. And
Absolutely.
I'm quite big on the whole thing of like, we should, like portray the best we can, and we shouldn't always prejudge and discriminate because, like when I was growing up, a lot of discrimination used to happen, especially with like police, people of authority. Like I must have had that gifted face, but they just used to be like, we need to talk to you. So and it would always quite happen, and I would always try and keep my disposition the same and not let it affect me. But I even had it once where, like even at the police station, one of the solicitors tried to tell me to admit to something, and I was like, no. And they're like, if you admit to it, you'll be okay. And I was like, no, I'm not going to. You know what I mean? And they were like, no, but this will just speed it up. But then, if you let those type of things make your experience a bit more hardened or whatnot, then you're changing who you are as a person as well. So I don't think that's right. I think you should just try and use it to better yourself.
I have to admit, on social media, I have seen some, we try not to judge, but we are human beings, and, you do sort of think, oh my word. So I always say, because I have seen some sisters that are dressed with their boobs hanging out, with their strappy dresses, doing their thing and putting it all over social media, and I just think, oh my God, that digital footprint will be there forever. Even the day you die and you're in that coffin, people can pull up those digital footprints of you dressed inappropriately according to Islam. And I always say, if people do that, as a Muslim person, what we need to be doing is doing du'as for them, pray for them, because deep down they could be really, really lovely people. Really, really lovely. I've known drug addicts, alcoholics that are genuinely lovely people, but unfortunately Satan has got the better of them and they've gone down the wrong path, or
that's where that support and that love is important. So once you give that one in the dua with for everyone to have,
showing that
You
guidance.
know what I mean?
Exactly.
Bang on.
Exactly. And sometimes people have seen me support people in a roundabout way. How come you're on such and such's live stream that dresses a certain way? Well, you just don't know. It could be a form of dawah that you're sort of trying to help them by,
you shouldn't shun people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's about being accepting.
It could be a front. Maybe they're putting that on as a front to mask like real issues that they've
well,
got going
with
on.
social media, there's a lot of validation, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
People will dress a certain way. They'll create drama just for views.
Yeah.
They'll dress a certain way just for views because it calculates into money. It pays, And so.
Going back onto social media then and TikTok, now you see a lot of people who are doing modest fashion trends. Would you say that it is a trend, or are they just doing it for marketing purposes, as you've just said?
Yeah, sometimes the young sisters are exploited on a level. Oh, it's it is really something a bit worrying, because they're exploited by companies that are even on the boycott list, and they're willing to be the face of perfumes and various different things. And these are our young sisters. It is actually something that I am very passionate about, because I do think that, young sisters look so beautiful. They're a great marketing strategy for businesses. Just be mindful as business owners how we are exploiting our younger generation, because in Islam we shouldn't even be on TV. We know what's haram and what's halal. We're all sinners. However, some people are left vulnerable at the expense of money.
True. Now some of these I've got to say, modest outfits, they cost a lot more than maybe a designer perfume. But is that really the point? So what I want to say is, should modesty be more about behaviour then, and rather than just about clothing?
I think it comes hand in hand, to be honest with you. A modesty is not just down to your clothing; it's down to your behavior, your conduct, the way you speak. And I think it's all about self-bettering yourself. And again, I always bring it back to Islam, because I always try and use as a guiding principle that we've got a perfect example. You know what I mean? Our Prophet, peace be upon him. And I always try and reflect, there's many situations, even to do with one of the stories where he used to walk past and this lady used to dump her rubbish outside, and you used to go by him or fall on him or whatnot, and he wasn't oh, how dare you or whatnot. When on the one occasion it didn't happen, he knocked the door to see if she was okay. And it just shows you should always try and be the better person, because that's what it is about, to be honest with you. Making yourself better, keeping a good energy, and inshallah, you can rub that off on someone else. And our sister Sunita said about that could be a bit of guidance or help, because they could have some underlining things, and that's a front. And that act of kindness,
showing up, isn't it?
Yeah, will basically kind of make them come out a bit, and then probably change them to be a better person too, which I think is quite prevalent and quite important to do.
I think I'm a big believer in kill them with kindness, because if you keep showing up all the time and being your best self, I've seen people who aren't very nice, but they've turned.
Yes.
And they've made better choices in life, because they finally get it that actually, if you keep behaving that way, you're always going to get the same results. So coming back to this, sorry, I've gone off topic.
No, don't worry.
Coming back to being modest, I do think it's a minefield out there, and your consumer, they're going to pay what they want to pay. So that I know I'm being exploited here. So when you're choosing to buy certain things from certain companies, like Frida was saying, I think you need to make that decision wisely, because you've got to live with that decision as well.
Yeah, I mean, modest. It's a huge topic, isn't it?
It is. It is. So how would we then?
Like even how you conduct yourself, what your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would we then teach the next generation the balance between modesty and modernity?
I think being a role model yourself, at the end of the day, you should preach what you say, and also try and even if say you do have some bad habits, just try and distill good ones into the youngsters and so forth. So it is just about self-improvement, improving them, realizing that at the end of the day, there is someone watching you at the end of the day, so you should try and better yourself. So I just think it comes down to just self-reflection as well.
Lovely. Right, on that note then, so modesty isn't just about clothing or what's on your head, it's what's in your head.
And it's not just modesty as in, can I just touch on this one?
Yeah.
It's just not about our sisters. There's a lot of men that have got their chests out there. They want to show off their
ego. It's ego and pride.
Ego and their guns,
and their, six pack and their muscles and their abs, and we don't want to see it. No. We really don't. Don't. Put your t-shirts back on.
Lovely.
Or wear something a bit looser. Some of them are bursting out their shirts, but they want to show off their workout.
Yes. Well, what I was going to say was modesty again isn't about clothing or what's on your head. It's what's in your head, and like Vida says, but that doesn't mean we can't slay while staying covered. Right. Moving on to the next topic then, the art of being petty. When is it justified? Now, let's be honest. We all have our petty moments. But is there ever a good time to be petty? When does it go from being a small clapback to being toxic? And what's the pettiest thing that you've ever done? So, panel, is being petty always bad, or can it be deserved?
I personally think that being petty just, yes, it might be a natural go-to when you're younger or growing up or whatnot, but I do think it's something that you should try and stay away from, because at the end of the day, you're just lowering your character. You should try and conduct yourself in a better way. If you let yourself get affected by everything like the wind, basically, then you've got no substance. You should basically be able to hold your own and reflect, and with your good energy, make the other person change.
I suppose, I was trying to reflect on the word petty, because for me, it's just a life of peace. As you get older, that's all you want in your life. Sukoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bang on. Bang on.
That's all.
Picking-
Yeah.
But the pettiness that I see a lot of it going on social media.
Yeah.
Oh, she said this, so he said this, and he said this, and she said this, and it gets to a stage where it becomes the pettiness becomes
It
quite
does, yeah.
dangerous. Dangerous to people's mental health. You know, pettiness can then lead to people feeling like they want to unalive themselves. It can lead to people putting false allegations where police are, you know, breaking down people's doors. So the petty behaviour, it's just uncalled for. It really is.
I think if you engage in being petty, it actually says a lot about you.
Mm.
If you're engaging in that, it does become a catalyst, really, and things just escalate, and there's no need for it.
Bang on.
I think if you're, I don't know if you've heard of Mel Robbins, I'm a huge fan, but she's got a let them theory. Has anyone heard of that? So she basically says, let them. If anyone's being petty, if they're doing anything that's negative, it's more about your reaction to how you deal with it. So you don't have to mirror their behaviour and become part of it and just keep going on that downward spiral. And she gives really good examples of all sorts of different behaviour, but she's saying just let them, because what they're choosing to do is a reflection of them.
Yeah.
And even if it means that they're being, you know, really mean to you or whatever the situation is, but if you just let them, because you've got to let them be accountable for themselves, and it's about how you respond, and it's almost like being the bigger person, really. But that doesn't mean you're tolerating it and carrying on choosing to take that abuse. That's not what it's about. It's about
maintaining your
owning
standards.
own, being accountable for yourself and how you respond and react.
Yeah, bang on, sis. I completely agree with that. You got to have that self level of standard respect for yourself as well, and conduct. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
So would you say that women get judged more for being petty than men?
No.
I think women are known for being like catty. You know, if you work in an environment
Oh,
where there's lots of women,
I don't know, if
things
you-
like
if
that,
you-
it's that reputation, isn't it? That women bicker, that kind of thing.
I
get where
don't
you
know.
come from.
There's a huge, you know, the LGBT community is massive. Yeah. And if you've been ever around gay men, they can be bitchy. Excuse the expression. So I just think it's down to people's characters. If they're wired a certain way.
Yeah, I think when men do it, when men are being petty, they're seen as being funny. But when we do it, it's a bit too much. Do you feel that as well? I mean, do you come across it on TikTok?
I think
Or
I've seen a lot.
stereotype. I think it's a stereotype where people do think women behave more like this. We always say when you get a group of women together, you know, there's going to be those arguments, those judgments. I do think that's expected when you've got a group of women together, but not everybody. Again, it comes down to you as an individual.
I mean, on social media, it's a bit of a hard one because people create drama just for views because it then generates them an income. So people will jump on the bandwagon and create, you know, even men, women, they'll just do it just for because it's creating them money.
Yeah.
It's like an
ultimately.
act in it.
Yeah, it is an act.
Yeah.
But petty behaviour. You just need some peace.
Okay, talking about peace then, Frida. So can being petty actually be therapeutic then?
Some people get their little rises, but I don't think it will be like, you know,
No.
sustained, because you know, you've kind of like you've done something to you know, upset or like, oh, I've got that person or I've got one on them. But you're always then, let's say if you're inclined to that will basically be kind of like your energy around you, and I don't think that's right. I just think, you know, if you're gonna get a rise from doing something as trivial as that, then it kind of shows what your character is and how you really need to improve as a person, because that stuff you basically
you become the company you keep.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're around people who are really petty, that it kind of rubs off on you, and you will also become that petty person, and you're not giving off the best version of yourself.
Exactly. Yes.
bang on.
It's all about energy, isn't it?
Definitely.
Oh, you don't want that negativity.
No.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So on that note, it looks like sometimes being petty then is just about self-care in disguise. Right. Okay. Panel. As you know, next week is going to be our last Loose Sisters, and I am planning an Eid special. So out of all the programs, can you tell me your best bits for now?
I've enjoyed all of
Oh,
it.
Yeah, actually, yeah, honestly,
If I'm honest, yeah.
yeah, it's really been great.
It's been lovely to meet the panel.
Oh, bless you. And you,
And yeah, it's been really nice to be part of this. I've really
I
enjoyed
think
it.
That's
we've
good.
talked quite well. We've bounced off each other's ideas, and I think it's just been nice in general.
Frida, you're very
Yeah,
quiet.
yeah.
I'm getting a
No,
bit worried.
I'll be honest. On reflection, when I know you always give us our questions prior.
Yeah.
However, there was one topic that I thought, I wish we'd dwelled into that a lot more.
Yeah.
And that was the social media, and what do you think of social media and the trolling?
Okay.
And I think we really could have done with highlighting that.
Well, why don't we do that next week then?
Yeah,
Yeah. If you
'Cause-
want to drop me the question,
yeah.
and then I can put it with the rest of the
Because
material.
I think legality-wise,
Okay.
that needs to be highlighted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you could lead on that because obviously you're the main professional, you're the main influencer. So yeah, we will throw that topic your end and you could lead on it. So we'll give you that charge.
Yeah, but other than that, it's
Yes.
been great. I've loved the wealth of experience and knowledge that was brought within the panel.
Yeah.
And I think it's been beautiful the way we've just bounced off each other. And I hope the listeners have really enjoyed it.
That's good.
Inshallah.
I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed it. I mean, Lou Sisters has always been a favourite, irrespective of the title. But anyway. So is there anything else that you would like to delve into next week then that we could share? I've got my own thoughts on how I'm going to do it, but I want to see what you guys will be interested in
Oh, because it's
as a
Eid.
finale. Yeah,
a
the Lou Sisters
finale.
finale.
For Eid.
I think different cultures coming together. I felt quite included.
Oh,
coming to
bless you.
Ramadan.
That's
Oh,
good.
yeah.
It's been
Yeah.
lovely for me.
Yeah.
And speaking to Prince, sorry for it. Speaking to Prince on the way here, we've had a little chat,
Oh,
on the way
bless
to
you.
and from. I've just really enjoyed getting to know him.
Oh, bless
And
you,
one
sis,
thing
and
we
you.
realised is our cultures are actually very similar.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's been quite
Mm.
an eye opener.
And you're saying about the cultures, but what I've really loved is the fact that we've got a man on
Yes.
board.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's really contributed.
He has, bless
And
him.
Jazakallah, guys, I appreciate
Can I
it.
just add?
Yes.
A very brave man.
Yeah.
It takes,
you have to be brave to come on to Lou Sisters.
especially with 4 women.
Yes.
That's it.
No, I'll tell you what, he's really held his head high
No,
and he's
Jazakallah.
contributed very well to Lou Sisters. But anyway, on that note, obviously this is another week of Lou Sisters gone, and we've laughed again, we've debated, and we've definitely spilled some tea, as we always do. So a huge shout out to my fabulous panel. That's Sunita, Frida, Zainab, who's left us, as you can see, and Prince as well is still here. So you sisters and brother have brought the heat on today, as always. And to our listeners as well, you are the real MVPs. If you don't know what MVP stands for, it's most valuable players. So again, we will be back next Sunday from 11 a.m. right the way up until 1 p.m. with the Lou Sisters finale. And trust me, this is going to be exciting and you do not want to miss it. So we're going to go off now with a bang for more unfiltered, unapologetic and very loose conversations. You know what you got to do. Stay tuned, and as always, stay opinionated, stay bold, and most importantly, stay loose. And we will see you all next week. Take care.